Hello students and welcome to this explanation on cost volume profit analysis. So this is a cute example that I came across. It's called Livelife and it gives you two competitor companies for whom you have to do several calculations or find several blanks. So this is typically the type of way that this question is asked or this topic is tested. So let's look at the question. It says Livelife is a company that requires your assistance in comparing or performing a comparison between the entity and its nearest competitor, which is called Happy-Go-Lucky. The following information is available. So for Livelife, they haven't given you sales units, but they've given you fixed cost, a variable cost per unit, a sales price per unit. The contribution margin ratio is a question mark. The break-even in sales in rand is a question mark. For Happy-Go-Lucky, in this column, they've given you the current sales units, which is 4,000. Let's just type for clarity's sake, it should be units. Then there is a question mark for the fixed cost. They've given you the variable cost. The selling price is a question mark. They've given you the contribution margin ratio, and then the break-even sales in a rand, which is 6,250,000. In the first required part, they ask you to determine the number of units that Livelife must sell to break even. So it's break even in units. Then suppose that Happy-Go-Lucky made a profit of 4 million. So the competitor made a profit of 4 million. How many units were sold in order to generate this profit? Then in required 3, they ask you, suppose that Livelife Limited sold 250,000 units. What is the total cost? All right, so what's important is to remember that the total cost is a sum of two things, fixed cost as well as your variable cost, but I am going to show that calculation. Then in required 4, they ask you what is Livelife's contribution margin ratio, and then they ask you Happy-Go-Lucky's margin of safety ratio. All right, great. So this is what we need to calculate, and I'm just going to do these calculations by hand. I find that the mathematics is a bit easier when it's written by hand. It might be more difficult to interpret when one has to type it on Excel. However, I am going to provide a typed solution in Excel. Right, so I'm just going to open Paint, and we need to do required number 1. So required number 1 says that we need to calculate the break-even in units. So this is the part where your formula sheet will be very, very important. So we have break-even and we have to calculate it in units. So the formula there is the fixed cost divided by the selling price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. If I look at my information in the column of Livelife, I see that the fixed cost was 6 million, while the selling price was 3,000 and the variable cost was 750 rand. If I do the calculation in terms of mathematical order, it says we must first do brackets, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. So I'm going to start with solving the bracket. So that would leave us with 6 million divided by double 250, which is the answer, the difference between 3,000 and 750. If I then say 6 million divided by 250, I get an answer of 2666.67. On your calculator, it's 666 repetitively. Well, this answer is in units, and one must take into account that you cannot make 67% of a unit, right? You either make a unit or you don't. So I'm going to round it to 2667 units for break even in terms of the company Livelife. Right, so that was required number 1. If we go back to required number 2, they said, suppose that Happy-Go-Lucky made a profit of 4 million rand. The company, how many units did the company sell to generate this profit? Okay, so let's go back to the information that was given. If I calculate profit, what do I need to calculate profit? I need my sales price and I need my fixed cost. So there's two things that I need to go and calculate. If I look at this information, right, I can calculate my sales price through the contribution margin ratio. So let's first do that. I'm going to go to paint again. We are on number 2. So for number 2, I'm going to look at my contribution margin ratio, right? So contribution margin ratio. And again, you need to know the formulas. What is the formula there? It is the selling price minus your variable cost divided by the selling price. So if I look at the information, again, as it relates to happy-go-lucky, I have the variable cost. I don't have the selling price, but I do have the contribution margin. What is very important to remember about the contribution margin is when we apply our mathematics, we always use it in the decimal format. So going back, I'm going to say I don't know the selling price. I know the variable cost, it's 600. I don't know the selling price, but I do have the contribution margin ratio. In decimals, it's 0,8. Now I can apply mathematics. I'm just going to split this page in two. I can apply mathematics in order to solve this because now I can do cross multiplication, right? So for cross multiplication, it says if you have a figure that you need to calculate, you can cross multiply to find the answer. So if I cross multiply 0,8 by the sales price, it's going to be 0,8 times the sales price, right? And then I'm going to say 1 times the sales price minus 600, and anything times by 1 will remain itself. So it is sales price minus 600. Right, so going forward, I'm just going to write there. Now I'm able to solve this problem by taking all the information that is, I missed an SB there, sorry, of the same sort and put it together. So what I will do is I am going to take this sales price figure and I'm going to take it, as they say, over the rainbow. So in doing that, I'm going to get to 0,8 of the selling price minus the selling price should give me minus 600. Then I have 0,8 minus a sales price. Now, if we have simply sales price, it is one time once itself, right? Anything, if you have X, it's 1X. If you have Y, it's 1Y. So this is going to be 0,8 minus 1, and that's going to give us minus 0,2 of the selling price. And that should be minus 600. Then to solve this problem, I need to divide by minus 0,2 on every side. So that will cancel out. I need an answer here and the selling price will remain. And in calculating that, I find that the selling price should then be equal to, if I do that mathematics, 600 divided by 0.2, I get that the selling price is 3,000 Rand. Right, so now I've solved that. So I would like to go back to my Word document and I just want to fill it out. I wonder if I can. I can. Right, so the answer is 3,000. The next thing I need to calculate will be my fixed cost. And the fixed cost can be calculated from the break-even as sales in Rand, right? So how do we get to break-even sales in Rand? We say that break even in Rand is the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin ratio. So the fixed cost we do not have, but we do have the contribution margin ratio, which we always write in decimals, and we have an answer to break even in sales, which is in Rand, and that was 6,250,000. So again, I have this calculation where I can cross multiply. So it's going to be 1 times the fixed cost, which is the fixed cost, and 0,8 times the 6,250,000. So that means that the fixed cost is equal to 0.8 times 6,250,000, and I get 5 million. I'm going to go back, I'm going to fill it out. 5 million. Great, so now we can know how we made this profit. Because this profit was made by saying that we've made a bit of profit from sales minus variable cost. And then we've also had to minus the fixed cost. So in this instance, I'm going to say the contribution, if I look at the 3,000 minus 600, should be 2,400 Rand. So that was the contribution per unit. In order to then solve that calculation, I'm going to say it's then 2,400 Rand per unit minus the fixed cost of 5 million gave us a profit of 4 million. Now I need to put all the figures that are similar to one side. So this 5 million will have to go over the rainbow and be added. That means it's 2,400, so that's the contribution per unit. So times the number of units should give us 5 million plus 4 million. So that, we short a 0 there. I'm just going to squeeze it in there. So then it's 2,400 contribution per unit is then the sum of these two, which is 9 million. And now I need to divide by 2.4 on both sides. And if I do that calculation, my answer for the units that had to be sold, I get to 3,750. So basically, if they ask you to calculate the profit like they've done here, you can say it's the contribution margin times the number of units minus the fixed cost gives you the stated profit. So this contribution margin we calculated by saying 3,000 minus the 600. Right, next one, they said that Livelife sold 250,000 units. What was the total cost? Right, how do we calculate total cost? This is required number 3. So total cost will be variable cost plus fixed cost. And we are on Livelife, so the variable cost is a per unit. So it's 750 Rand, and they tell us that they sold 250,000 units. And then we're going to add to that the fixed cost, which was another expense, and that was 6 million. So please note how the variable cost is per unit, but the 6 million is in total. And if I multiply that, you get quite the figure. You get, let me just now write this properly, 187,500 000 plus 6 million. So again, I just first solved the bracket. And if I add those two together, I get 193,500 000 is my final answer for required number 3. Right, let's look at required number 4. It says, what is the contribution margin ratio for Livelife? Right, so number 4, we need to do the contribution margin ratio. Again, if you do not know the formulas, it's going to be a nightmare. So it's the sales price minus the variable cost divided by the sales price. Right, so this is then, our selling price is 3,000 for Livelife. Our variable cost is 750 and we are going to divide it by 3,000. So that gives us, if I do that calculation on my calculator, it's 2250 divided by 3,000. So that is 0.75. In percentage, it is 75%. Great. Then last little question. What is Happy-Go-Lucky Limited's margin of safety? So what does a margin of safety ratio? What does the margin of safety measure? It measures the difference between how safe we are in sales. So if I talk about the margin of safety, you think about the difference between actual sales and break-even sales. And if it's a ratio, you need to divide it by actual sales because they're asking for a ratio. So if I look at the actual sales, that's easy because for Happy-Go-Lucky, they gave you the 4,000 units. But what we need is the break-even units. But at this point, it should not be too difficult to calculate. So I'm just going to split this page in two. So we're first going to look at the break-even in units. And the break-even in units will be our fixed cost divided by the selling price minus the variable cost per unit. The fixed cost was, I believe, 5 million. And the sales price minus the variable cost was 2,400. So if I look at the break-even in units, 5 million divided by 2,400, I get 2083,33 units, but I am just going to say 2083. We won't make 33% of a unit. So what is the margin of safety ratio then? So for the margin of safety ratio, we're going to say what is the actual sales? It is 4,000 units minus the 2083 divided by the 4,000. So if I look at that, 4,000 minus 2083 is 1917. If I divide that by 4,000, I get 0.47925, and in percentage it's going to be 47.93%. Right, so very, very interesting, this question. I think it has a lot of interesting things like calculating a certain amount of profit, which is quite tricky. So you need to stick to your formula and then you should be fine, because this entire topic is just based on using certain formulas. So I hope that you have enjoyed this explanation, and then I will see you in our next video. Goodbye.